John, what part do you play in the film?
I play an abattoir worker alongside Mark Wingett, the other abattoir worker, and I basically help him bring the pigs in, and the horrible job basically that no one wants to do really in the real world. But yes, it was a very very grim part to play, but I wanted to play him because I wanted to give a message out to, just say it's not a very nice job. I don't know the way the animals are stored before they're killed, basically. So that's the part of the story I wanted to show. I wanted to sort of the message I want to get across.
And you were almost seen as a victim yourself, weren't you? Which I thought was quite a clever device.
Yes, it's.
Although your colleague was really horrible and harrowing in his portrayal of a vicious abattoir worker, you could see that you were torn, and I think that was quite clever because you didn't make it as black and white perhaps as it could have been. And I thought, you were seen as well tussling with your conscience, weren't you?
Yes, I think my character is very insecure. He's been bullied in the past, and obviously with that kind of job he's got, with his character as well, I think it's horrible to say, but it kind of enjoyed it because that's his character. He's a bit of a lad, bit of a boy with Mark and Jay Clinton, the other abattoir worker. So he works well with the guys, but that's his character. But I enjoy playing the character as well, but at the same time, it's trying to think really, but I don't particularly like that side of him.
No,
personally, no.
It's interesting, isn't it, Johnny, that you and Jay, sorry to interrupt, ELKE, but I just thought it was interesting at this moment to talk about him and Jay and Mark's characters, the different levels of work that the abattoir workers do, and there's a hierarchy there, whereas John Pickering, who it comes in later in the film, who is with Mercy later on, which we don't want to give too many things away, but he's got that, that's his first kind of day kind of thing. But these guys, they've been more brutalized by the system and become brutal themselves.
Yeah, desensitized to it. Yes, definitely. And Mercy, what was it like playing that role? It must have been quite hard.
Yeah, it was. It's probably the toughest role I've done so far. Wendy and I had a lot of conversation in the run-up to it about sort of how animal-like we were going to make her, because, again, without wanting to give too much away, the pigs in the film are very human, hopefully, so that the audience, as Carol pointed out earlier, will empathise with them, and it kind of bridges the gap into the actual slaughterhouse footage as well, and hopefully they connect with the humans in that sort of situation. But one of the things that I found it initially quite tricky to reconcile is particularly all of the sort of fight sequences with the various slaughtermen that Mercy encounters. In a sort of those sequences were taken directly from actual footage. So from where our fight directors sort of lifted the sequences, so from what's done to her to where some of it is shot from the perspective of a kind of CCTV camera. And obviously as a human, if someone does something horrid to me, I'm either going to fight them or run away. Whereas a pig has this real innocence and sort of trust in people. So kind of trying to reconcile that for me was a kind of interesting task. And I hope it works.
Very much so. Where did you actually film those quite nightmarish scenes?
We were filming. Sorry, ELKE, I interrupted you.
Where was it filmed?
It was filmed at a farm.
Oh.
It's now, correct me if I'm wrong, Wendy, it's an arable farm now, isn't it? But it used to, years ago, they used to keep animals there. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we were
farm in Rayleigh.
Yeah, so we were all on location there, filming the majority of the film, and particularly all of those kind of slaughterhouse sequences, which was, it was so atmospheric to be there, that I found that really helped with the sort of nature of what we were doing.
It was very moving when the shutters came up, and you could smell the fresh air, and there was that kind of hope that something better was outside, and of course it wasn't. I thought that was very powerful. Yeah, very powerful. It was a really good film. Are you a vegan as well? May I ask? Mercy, I was going to call you.
I answered to both. I have never been a big meat eater. Generally, I never really liked meat. But doing Mercy was a real. I used to occasionally, like, my parents would feed me like chicken or something. But Mercy was a massive kind of turning point for me. I remember going into the supermarket. We'd had quite a long day of filming one of the fight sequences between Mark and I, and that for me, that was kind of probably
the turning point.
Yeah, and I just remember going into the supermarket. I was staying in Southend while we were filming, and I went in after we finished one evening and still had a bit of like makeup of sort of fake blood, a bit of dust, a bit of mud, a bit of like tears, etc. Looked a massive state, I think, but went into Tesco's to try and find something for dinner, and I stood in the meat aisle and totally, like, I hadn't kind of consciously thought, which sounds odd, I guess, doing this role, I kind of thought about her so much as a character, and like you would with any other real character, whether it was, I don't know, Queen Elizabeth or something you were playing, you research that character. And I just walked down this meat aisle in Tesco's and stood and cried. And just couldn't, suddenly it sort of hit me like a ton of rocks, and I haven't any want to eat, not that, as I say, I wasn't particularly keen on meat anyway, but now I feel really quite, I don't like the smell of it. Yeah, so that was I think the end of any meat eating for me, and I still can't look at meat without seeing. I watched so much of the slaughterhouse footage when we were working on Mercy, and sort of studied it. I can't get that now really out of my head.
So what happens, I mean, what happens now with the film? Because presumably, how do you get it from this stage, where obviously it's going to be well received by people who are vegans and vegetarians, and I'm sure, but how do you get it out into the outside world where people aren't necessarily vegans and vegetarians? What's the plan?
It's a question of all the things that Wendy has been doing to date, which is submissions and circulating to people who will have an interest in movies such as this, and getting in touch with all one's contacts, some of whom are in a position to help, some of whom are already helping, some quite big names. And it's great if you've got that contact or a contact who knows somebody, and that's what one has to try to utilize. It's, I suppose, like any business, isn't it, at all? Trying to network and get whatever it is you're trying to sell off the ground, be it a movie, a song, yourself, you've got to try and push it.